Hey guys, it's Bart.
And Dave.
And this week we're going to be talking to you about something we haven't chatted to you about before.
Yeah, the elephant in the room, which is how much surrogacy really costs. And it's interesting, we know quite a few other people that have gone through surrogacy journeys, and everyone's a little cagey, a little reticent to talk about how much their journeys cost. So we think it's for two main reasons. So first off, there's no getting around that surrogacy is really expensive, crazy expensive, and people are just very uncomfortable talking about things that cost so much. But I think the other reason is that you're really talking about the expense of bringing a new life into the world, and so for obvious reasons, there's a lot of awkwardness around that. We think about Sloan, and of course she's priceless to us, just this precious miracle. But at the end of the day, also there were these concrete costs involved in terms of bringing her into the world. And so in this video, we really want to keep it real and just be brutally honest in terms of sharing the cost of our journey with you, dollar by dollar.
So right here we have our expenses from our agency for Sloan's journey, and we're going to walk you through it right now.
Yeah, and notice that it's very creased because we've been studying it closely. These numbers are big, so be forewarned.
Yes. So first is the agency fees. So this is what? It's project management, it is sourcing surrogates and egg donors. It's really coordinating the whole process. And this was $42,500. Yeah. So it's a big bulk of the expense here. The next is surrogate expenses. This amounted to $39,400. And a few different things under there, $30K of which was just a fee to our surrogate for going through with having Sloan, and then the rest were for other things like travel, lost wages, and childcare.
And then obviously the other female that was a critical part of this was our egg donor. And so the egg donor fees were just shy of $12,000, and that was $8K in straight up compensation. And then similar to surrogate expenses, there were a bunch of fees related to travel, screenings, etc. And next up is medical fees. This was actually the biggest bucket of $53,200, and these were expenses related to IVF, both egg donor and surrogate monitoring, all the expenses that we incurred via our IVF clinic.
Next is psychological services. This amounted to $5,500, and this is what it sounds like: psychological screenings for ourselves, for our surrogate, for our egg donor, just to make sure no one's too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little crazy, but somehow we passed, so it was worth it.
Next, legal fees. These amounted to $17,500, and this is to really make sure that we go through the process correctly on the state level, depending on where your surrogate is, to have the correct parentship for your child.
Yeah, and making sure all the contracts are in place so that as soon as Sloan is born, there's no question that we are the legal parents and no weirdness with our surrogate or our egg donor.
Yeah. And in Colorado, for instance, we actually were able to get a judgment before birth that Sloan was actually our child. Depending on the state, you might be able to do something like that.
So adding all of that up, plus a bunch of smaller expenses, the total cost of our surrogacy journey with Sloan was $171,300.
Oh my God. Do you know numbers? Do you know numbers?
This number is so staggering. So all in all, the total cost of our journey for Sloan was $171,361, which obviously is a lot of money. And when you think about some of those expenses, there's definitely ways of making this cheaper. So for instance, if you have a family member or a friend who's willing to be an egg donor for free, obviously you save money that way, or even better, if they're willing to be a surrogate, that's a big amount of the expenses cut off. But we will say that a lot of these expenses are just so important to safeguard your journey. And so while we definitely encourage you to be creative with ways that you can potentially slim down these expenses, at the end of the day, just surrogacy is also not something that you want to cut corners too much to the point where you might end up in a position where you have a compromised relationship with your surrogate, your donor, or even worse, your child.
So believe it or not, although this was super expensive, it could be even more expensive. We were lucky that our surrogate actually had her own health insurance, but if your surrogate doesn't, then you'll have to buy a specific plan, which will add to the cost itself.
Yeah, it could be like another $30,000 to $40,000.
Yeah. So all in all, obviously Sloan was a very big expense, but completely worth it. And we were lucky enough that we had some savings from our jobs the past few years to be able to afford this. But we know how big of a burden this cost could be and how many people want to start a family, but that's a big issue in trying to start it.
So hopefully this video is helpful. Actually, Sloan is just waking up, so we have to run.
Time is ticking.
Yeah. And we just really wanted to give this brutally honest perspective on how much surrogacy really costs. If you like these videos, please subscribe, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.